I decided to share my story because when I was first diagnosed, I started opening up to people around me. And as soon as I did that, I had people coming to me and seeking out help and advice because they knew that I was a safe place to go, someone who wouldn't judge, someone who'd been through it. And the more and more I talk about it, the more and more people I'm helping just by being there and being someone that they can go to. And that's so important, is being that person that other people feel safe with. I have been diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety, and those really go hand in hand for me. I don't know that I'm ever experiencing one without the other, but one usually does come out more than the other. With my depression, it's isolating and refusing to be around people. It's not answering messages. It's shutting down and not being a part of my life anymore. Anxiety, on the other hand, is being too much a part of my life and overreacting about everything that's going on and really thinking that everything that's happening is the biggest thing that's happening, and not allowing myself to just go through life in kind of that neutral, positive way that I need to operate and be a successful person. My first memory that I usually talk about is in 5th grade, when I stopped going out to recess. I didn't want to be around people, even though I had friends and I had people to play with. I didn't want to go out. And instead I would stay inside and I would help the guidance counselor, the teacher, and just kind of make up any excuse to not be around people. But looking even further back, there were instances as young as 4 years old where I would just have incredibly violent outbursts towards other people, towards myself, towards my parents. And sometimes that would be screaming, sometimes that would be crying, sometimes it would be throwing things at another kid or hitting my mom with a pillow. I didn't want to ever cause anyone harm, but I just felt like I needed to get that out there. I needed other people to feel what I was feeling inside. What seemed like the biggest tantrum of all time was just a very, very small piece of what I was feeling inside, and I was just letting that out. Looking back on that, I always just thought I was a bad kid. I thought that I was a naughty kid. I was always getting in trouble as young as 1st grade, and my teachers didn't want me in their class. And looking back on that, I just think I was in turmoil all of the time, and no one was picking up on that, and no one ever stopped to ask, "Are you okay?" And they were just punishing the action instead of trying to understand why I was acting that way and why I was acting out. And I really wish there would have been someone who stopped me at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and just said, "Why do you keep throwing these tantrums? What's going on? Can we try to work through this?" Instead of just saying, "Go sit in the corner, you're in trouble." I didn't get help until I attempted to end my life. Thinking about suicide was not a rash decision. It was something I'd thought about for a very long time. I think without even having a clear understanding of what suicide was and what it meant. I worked my way up to that attempt with a lot of suicidal gesturing, and when I made that decision, I don't know that I fully thought it through. It was just really the only option I felt like I had. I knew that I'd been dealing with this pain for so many years, and this was going to be the only way to end that pain. I think that was the first time my parents had to fully accept that something was wrong and we need to get her help. And even though they'd seen mental illness in their family, they didn't want to admit that it was happening to their child, to their daughter. Even today, 15 years later, I don't know if they've fully accepted that mental illness is a real thing in my life, and it's a real thing in their lives because of me. And there is that stigma surrounding, oh, well, if a child has problems, it's clearly because of the way they were raised, which couldn't be further from the truth, especially in my own experience. My parents raised me perfectly. They did everything they could for me. There is still always going to be that hope that I don't have to deal with this. They don't like seeing me in pain. They don't want me to have to deal with treatment the rest of my life. They want me to be able to just live a happy life without depression and anxiety. So accepting that that's kind of the fate of their child, I know is really difficult for them, but life after diagnosis was so much better. Everything just made sense. I had a reason that I'd had all of these problems throughout my early years of life, and I had an understanding of what was going on in my brain that I didn't have before. Before, I just thought I was a bad kid. When I got this diagnosis of why I felt the way I felt, why I felt so down all the time, why I felt so down on myself and so anxious to be perfect, everything kind of just made sense to me. And being able to open up about that and hear from other people that this is something that goes on in their mind too, I was like, wow, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person out there who feels this way and has experienced this. After my first initial diagnosis, I was handed a prescription and pushed out the door. And I had no understanding of what this medication would do to my brain, what it would do to my body, and what my mental illness was doing to my brain and my body. And it did take finding the right counselor to explain all of those things to me and treat me as an adult. You know, I'm a 13-year-old kid and they're treating me like a kid, but I have this very kind of grown-up disease that I'm dealing with a lot as a young person, and I needed someone to just say, hey, you're dealing with this, and you also have a right to know what's going on in your body, both before and after medication and treatment. And after I had that initial counselor who really pushed me to educate myself about what mental illness is, then I started taking kind of a self-advocacy role and really learning for myself too, and that's been really beneficial. But I had absolutely no direction before finding that one person who actually cared enough to help me out on the journey. The biggest stigmas that I've had to kind of overcome in my life are finding jobs. I was in Air Force ROTC in college. That was going to be what I did with my life. You have to kind of let them dive into your medical records. And when they saw that I had a suicide attempt, I had to get a waiver with the Surgeon General saying that I had made up my entire life, that I never had a mental health condition, that I never tried to end my life. I couldn't be on medication for a mental illness, so I went off medication. If I could just pretend that this mental health condition had never been a part of my life, it didn't have to be anymore, right? Going off of medication was not good for me. I started self-medicating. I started failing out of college. It really spiraled out of control. I got to a point where I remember being in my dorm room, curled up in a ball, calling my mom saying, I'm failing everything. And my parents had given me everything so I could go to college. And I was blowing my opportunity trying to be this person that I couldn't really be. That wasn't my path. I had to redirect and just finish college and focus on what was next. I'm a wife and a cat mom, hopefully soon to be a mom to humans. And I have 4 different jobs. I'm a workaholic, but I don't like to be stuck in one place. I love taking care of myself and taking care of other people. So I get to work in the wellness industry, and that's so amazingly helpful to me. And then knowing that I'm positively affecting other people is wonderful. Recovery for me is looking a little different every year. I know that counseling has always been positive for me. I go to counseling twice a week, and that's so incredibly helpful. And going into the winter months, I know that I need a little extra help. So looking at medication again, because my self-care routines aren't quite cutting it anymore. But I do know that taking care of myself and doing the things that make me feel good, exercising, eating right, as hard as it is sometimes, is incredibly positive towards my recovery. And just sharing my story is the #1 thing that's helped, because I spent so many years as a kid feeling alone and like I was the only one, and that there was something wrong with me and that I was defective. And then when I started sharing my story, and classmates who I would never have suspected were dealing with the same things said, "I'm dealing with the same things as you," that opened up a whole new world for me. That I have all of these people who understand and are on my side and want me to succeed, and they want me to be able to help them succeed. All of that's been so incredibly positive towards recovery, but I also know it's not the end of the road. It's going to be something that I have to continue to work on, probably for the rest of my life.